So, a federal judge just denied Donald Trump's bail request in what legal experts are calling an unprecedented moment in American history. A former president of the United States now facing inevitable jail time while awaiting trial. We're talking about a ruling that came down less than an hour ago, with the judge citing Trump's continued attacks on witnesses, violations of court orders, and what the court described as a clear and ongoing threat to the administration of justice. It's honestly hard to believe we've reached this point, but the judge's language left absolutely no room for interpretation. Donald Trump has spent his entire life operating as if rules don't apply to him, as if wealth and power create a shield that makes him untouchable. Whether it was stiffing contractors in Atlantic City, defying court orders in New York, or attacking judges and prosecutors throughout his political career, Trump has always believed he could bully, delay, and litigate his way out of any accountability. That's been his playbook for decades, and until now, it's largely worked. But guess what? A federal judge just said enough is enough. After months of Trump violating gag orders, attacking witnesses on social media, and making what prosecutors argued were veiled threats against court officials, the judge ruled that Trump cannot be trusted to remain free pending trial. This isn't about one violation or one contempt citation. We're talking about a pattern of conduct so egregious that the court concluded the only way to protect the integrity of the trial and the safety of participants is to remand Trump to custody immediately. This isn't just about Trump's freedom or his political campaign. We're talking about whether someone can systematically undermine the judicial system, threaten witnesses, violate court orders, and still expect to be treated with the leniency typically afforded to defendants. We're talking about the fundamental principle that no one, regardless of their former position or current political support, stands above the rule of law. And trust me, what happens in the next 24 hours as this order is executed will define American democracy for generations. Let me fill you in on what's been happening and why this judge just made the most consequential ruling in modern legal history. So, Donald Trump, 45th President of the United States, currently the Republican frontrunner for 2024, and as of approximately 1 hour ago, a defendant ordered into pretrial detention. He's been fighting legal battles on multiple fronts since leaving office in January 2021, but the federal election interference case has always been the most serious. This is the case involving his efforts to overturn the 2020 election, the pressure campaign on state officials, the fake electors scheme, and ultimately the January 6th attack on the Capitol. According to reports from Politico dating back to August 2023, when Trump was first arraigned in this case, the judge warned him explicitly about the conditions of his release. Trump was released on his own recognizance, which is standard for defendants who aren't considered flight risks. But the release came with strict conditions. He was ordered not to communicate with witnesses except through lawyers. He was prohibited from making statements that could intimidate witnesses or prejudice potential jurors. And he was warned in no uncertain terms that violations of these conditions could result in revocation of bail and pretrial detention. From the very beginning, Trump treated those conditions as suggestions rather than binding court orders. Whether it was attacking witnesses on Truth Social, making threatening statements about prosecutors and judges, or posting messages that seemed designed to intimidate anyone cooperating with investigators, Trump demonstrated that he had no intention of following the court's orders. He cemented himself as someone who believed his political status and public platform gave him the right to ignore judicial restrictions that would land any other defendant in jail immediately. But here's where the rubber meets the road. We're now 9 months into this case, and Trump's violations of his release conditions have escalated to the point where the judge finally had enough. The ruling that came down approximately 45 minutes ago, according to CNN's breaking news alert, represents a complete repudiation of Trump's belief that he's above the law and immune from consequences. Court orders have been violated repeatedly. Witnesses have been attacked publicly by name. Prosecutors have documented over 30 specific instances of Trump violating the gag order imposed months ago. This mess is unfolding because Trump apparently believed that his status as a former president and current presidential candidate created a special category where normal rules of pretrial release simply didn't apply to him. And guess who's stuck right in the middle? Yep, Donald Trump himself, now facing immediate incarceration while his legal team scrambles to figure out if there's any possible appeal or emergency motion that could delay execution of this order. He's supposed to be campaigning for president, holding rallies, raising money, and building momentum for 2024. But here's the kicker. The judge just ruled that Trump's conduct has been so egregious, so threatening to the integrity of the judicial process, that he cannot be allowed to remain free even for one more day. The order specifically states that Trump must surrender to U.S. Marshals within 24 hours to begin pretrial detention. And before we go any further, let's be real for a second. Revoking bail for a defendant, especially a high-profile defendant, is an extraordinary action that judges take very reluctantly. Courts generally prefer to keep defendants out of jail pending trial because of the presumption of innocence and because pretrial detention can interfere with a defendant's ability to prepare their defense. But when a defendant repeatedly demonstrates they cannot follow court orders and that their continued freedom threatens witnesses and the trial process itself, judges have no choice but to revoke bail. Now, back to the matter at hand. Reports from just 30 minutes ago revealed how explosive Trump's reaction has been to this bail revocation. According to sources who spoke with MSNBC, Trump was in a meeting with his legal team at Mar-a-Lago when he received word of the judge's ruling. Witnesses described him as apoplectic, raging, and screaming that this is election interference and a communist takeover. Within minutes of the ruling, Trump posted on Truth Social, ironically violating the court's directive not to make public statements about the case, even as he responded to the bail revocation. His post called the judge a radical leftist Obama appointee who was trying to rig the election by putting me in jail, and claimed that this is what happens in third world countries, not America. Talk about not learning your lesson. The judge just ruled that Trump cannot follow court orders and poses a threat to the judicial process. And Trump's immediate response is to attack the judge and continue the exact behavior that got his bail revoked. Essentially, Trump is proving the judge's point in real time. His inability to control himself, to refrain from attacks even when facing incarceration, demonstrates exactly why the court concluded he cannot be trusted to remain free pending trial. And this wasn't some off-the-cuff social media rant that nobody saw. Trump posted this to his millions of followers, ensuring maximum visibility and maximum potential for influencing witnesses or inciting his supporters to action. It's the kind of reckless conduct that makes judges wonder if a defendant is trying to provoke a mistrial or create chaos that might somehow work to their advantage. This announcement sent shockwaves through Washington, through Trump's campaign, and through the entire political establishment, because everyone understands what this means. A former president is going to jail, not after conviction, but before trial. This is unprecedented in American history, and it raises profound questions about Trump's political viability, his legal strategy, and the stability of our democratic system. If a federal judge has concluded that Trump is such a danger to the judicial process that he must be jailed immediately, what does that mean for the strength of the prosecution's case? What does it say about Trump's judgment and his ability to control his own worst impulses? And how will voters react to seeing a presidential candidate campaigning from behind bars? Now, this isn't the first time we've seen Trump face consequences for violating court orders, though it's by far the most serious. Trump's entire approach to judicial authority has always been defiance, delay, and attack. Whenever a judge rules against him or imposes restrictions on his conduct, he's quick to attack the judge personally, claim political bias, and rally his supporters to see the ruling as persecution rather than legitimate exercise of judicial authority. We've spotted this pattern time and time again throughout his legal battles. Just think about how he responded to the gag order in his New York civil fraud trial back in October 2023. Judge Arthur Engoron imposed a limited gag order prohibiting Trump from making public statements about the judge's staff after Trump posted a false and disparaging statement about the judge's principal law clerk. Trump didn't quietly comply or instruct his lawyers to appeal through proper channels. He kept attacking the clerk, kept attacking the judge, and violated the gag order multiple times. Each violation resulted in fines $10,000, then $15,000. But Trump kept doing it because he calculated that paying fines was worth the ability to keep attacking his perceived enemies. When the judge threatened jail time for future violations, Trump temporarily backed off. But he'd already demonstrated his fundamental disrespect for judicial authority and his belief that court orders were negotiable. Then there was his conduct in the E. Jean Carroll defamation case. After being found liable for sexual abuse and defamation, Trump was warned explicitly not to make further defamatory statements about Carroll. The jury had already awarded her $5 million. Any reasonable person would have stopped talking about her. But Trump couldn't help himself. He went right back to attacking Carroll, calling her a liar, repeating the same defamatory statements that had gotten him sued in the first place. This resulted in a second defamation trial where the jury awarded Carroll an additional $83 million. Trump's inability to follow the most basic legal advice, stop talking about the person who sued you, cost him tens of millions of dollars and demonstrated a pathological need to attack even when doing so is obviously self-destructive. And let's not forget how he handled the classified documents case. After being subpoenaed for all classified materials in his possession, Trump didn't simply comply and return everything. According to the indictment, he directed his staff to move boxes to hide them from his own lawyers, suggested that his attorney lied to federal investigators, and made statements indicating he knew he wasn't supposed to have the documents but intended to keep them anyway. Even after the FBI executed a search warrant and recovered over 300 classified documents, Trump continued attacking the investigation, claiming the documents were planted and suggesting the FBI was prepared to assassinate him during the search. Each attack made his legal position worse, but Trump seemed incapable of exercising the restraint that any other defendant would show. Even his attacks on judges hearing his cases followed a consistent pattern. When Judge Tanya Chutkan, who is overseeing the federal election interference case, imposed the initial gag order, Trump immediately attacked her as biased and suggested she should recuse herself. When Judge Lewis Kaplan, who presided over the Carroll trials, ruled against Trump's efforts to delay proceedings, Trump attacked him as too old and incompetent. When the New York Attorney General Letitia James brought the civil fraud case, Trump attacked her repeatedly with racial undertones, calling her Peekaboo James and suggesting she was only pursuing him because of her political ambitions. Now it looks like Trump's pattern of attacking judicial authority and violating court orders has finally caught up with him in the most serious possible way. This pattern is becoming all too familiar, though this time with catastrophic consequences. Trump attacks courts, violates orders, claims persecution, and assumes his political status will protect him from serious consequences. You can have clear violations, repeated warnings, escalating sanctions, but Trump believes that his base's support and his claims of political victimhood will override any judge's authority. The calculation has always been that the political benefits of defiance outweigh the legal risks, but that calculation just failed spectacularly. So, what exactly did Trump do that caused this judge to take the extraordinary step of revoking bail and ordering pretrial detention? Well, it all boils down to what prosecutors documented as a systematic campaign to intimidate witnesses and undermine the judicial process through public statements that violated explicit court orders. The situation escalated because Trump has been under a gag order since August 2023, prohibiting him from making public statements about witnesses, court staff, prosecutors' staff, or the judge's family. Despite this clear order, prosecutors filed a motion 2 weeks ago documenting over 30 separate violations. These weren't subtle or ambiguous statements. Trump posted messages on Truth Social naming witnesses and calling them liars and traitors. He reposted content from supporters that included witnesses' personal information. He made statements at rallies that prosecutors argued were clearly designed to send a message to anyone thinking about cooperating with the government. As prosecutors presented this evidence to the court, they decided to make an unprecedented request. They filed a motion asking the judge to revoke Trump's bail entirely and order him into pretrial detention, arguing that no amount of fines or warnings would deter his conduct and that the only way to protect the integrity of the trial was to incarcerate him immediately. Their approach was to document not just the violations themselves, but the pattern they represented: a sustained, intentional effort to undermine the case through intimidation and public pressure. At first, when prosecutors filed this motion on November 8th, legal observers thought it was unlikely the judge would actually grant it. Pretrial detention is typically reserved for defendants who are flight risks or who pose a physical danger to specific individuals. Trump is obviously not going to flee the country he's running for president. And while his rhetoric is dangerous, he hasn't made specific threats of violence against identifiable individuals. But here's where things shifted dramatically in the prosecution's favor. Over the past 2 weeks, as the court considered the detention motion, Trump's conduct actually got worse rather than better. According to the New York Times reporting from November 20th, Trump posted messages that prosecutors characterized as direct witness tampering, including a post that said, "Anyone who testifies against me is a liar looking for a deal." Real patriots know better than to cooperate with this witch hunt. Some witnesses told prosecutors they felt directly threatened by Trump's posts. One witness, according to MSNBC, contacted the FBI after receiving dozens of threatening messages from Trump supporters immediately after Trump mentioned their name in a Truth Social post. Another witness told prosecutors they were reconsidering their cooperation because of fears for their family's safety. While Trump's lawyers were arguing to the court that their client could follow conditions of release and that any violations were inadvertent or protected political speech, Trump himself was demonstrating the exact opposite. His conduct showed someone who either could not or would not control himself, who valued his ability to attack perceived enemies more than his freedom, and who posed a genuine and ongoing threat to witnesses in the trial process. This was the moment the judge's patience finally ran out completely. You see, judges have enormous discretion in managing pretrial release, but they also have a responsibility to protect the integrity of their courtroom and ensure that trials can proceed fairly. When a passion defendant demonstrates through repeated violations that they will not follow court orders, judges must act to prevent that defendant from sabotaging the entire proceeding. And then Trump made what the judge clearly viewed as the final fatal mistake. According to CNN's reporting from just 2 hours ago, Trump posted a message yesterday that prosecutors brought to the court's attention in an emergency filing this morning. The post included what prosecutors characterized as a thinly veiled threat against a key cooperating witness, suggesting that people who betray their country sometimes face ultimate justice. To prosecutors and the court, this crossed a line from general political rhetoric into what could reasonably be interpreted as inciting violence against a witness. The post came just days before that witness was scheduled to testify at a pretrial hearing. The timing and content made it impossible to view as anything other than an attempt to intimidate. But then, when the judge held an emergency hearing this morning to address this latest violation, Trump's lawyers had no good answers. They couldn't explain the post without admitting it violated the gag order. They couldn't promise Trump would stop because he'd already violated the order over 30 times, despite repeated warnings. And they couldn't offer any conditions of release that would actually ensure Trump's compliance, because Trump had already demonstrated that no conditions short of physical incarceration would restrain his conduct. In the judge's view, which was laid out in a 37-page written order issued about an hour ago, Trump had left the court with no choice. The order states, according to Politico's reporting, the defendant has repeatedly and willfully violated conditions of his release. He has attacked witnesses by name, made statements designed to intimidate those cooperating with the government, and demonstrated a complete disregard for this court's authority. Despite escalating sanctions, warnings, and opportunities to comply, the defendant's conduct has only intensified. The court concludes that no condition or combination of conditions of release will reasonably assure the safety of the community and the integrity of these proceedings. Accordingly, the defendant's pretrial release is hereby revoked. That's devastating legal language. The judge is saying Trump is such a threat to witnesses in the trial process that jail is the only option. Now, this left Trump in the most impossible position of his entire life, and it's entirely self-inflicted. On one side, his entire identity, his psychological makeup, and his political brand are built on being the fighter who never backs down, who attacks enemies relentlessly, and who treats any restriction on his conduct as tyranny to be resisted. His supporters love him specifically because he says what they're thinking, because he doesn't apologize, and because he fights dirty. Restraining his attacks would mean fundamentally changing who he is and undermining what his supporters find most appealing about him. On the flip side, he's now facing immediate incarceration because he cannot control those very impulses. That means sitting in a jail cell, unable to campaign, unable to post on social media, unable to hold rallies, and unable to maintain the constant presence that his political movement requires. It means showing up to court from detention, appearing before jurors as someone the judge concluded was too dangerous to remain free, and trying to maintain his strongman image while literally in government custody. The tricky part is these outcomes are both catastrophic for different reasons, and there's no third option available. Trump cannot simultaneously maintain his defiant attack-first persona and avoid jail. The judge has made that clear. Either he fundamentally changes his behavior, which would alienate his base and undermine his entire political appeal, or he goes to jail and campaigns from custody. So Trump is caught in the ultimate bind of his own creation. He can either continue being Trump, which means violating court orders, attacking witnesses and judges, and maintaining his defiant posture, and that guarantees he stays in jail for the duration of pretrial proceedings, which could be months. He'll be off the campaign trail during the most crucial period before the Republican primaries. He'll look weak and controlled rather than strong and defiant. Or he can try to actually comply with court orders, stop attacking witnesses, show respect for judicial authority, and potentially get bail reinstated after demonstrating good behavior. But that'll require a complete transformation of his public persona. He'll have to show restraint, humility, and respect for authority, qualities he's never demonstrated and that his supporters don't want to see. It would make him look beaten and diminished, exactly the image he spent his entire life trying to avoid. It's a lose-lose situation, and it's entirely the result of Trump's lifelong approach of attacking authority and assuming he could bully his way out of consequences. He apparently believed his political support and his willingness to claim victimhood would protect him even from incarceration. That assumption just proved catastrophically wrong. This whole scenario is causing absolute panic and chaos within Trump's campaign, within the Republican Party, and across the entire political landscape. If Trump is actually going to jail, if he's being hauled away by U.S. Marshals within the next 24 hours, every campaign advisor, every Republican official, and every supporter is left wondering what this means for his candidacy and for their own political futures. Those Republican primary opponents who have been carefully avoiding attacking Trump too directly are now facing a moment of decision. Do they seize on this as evidence that Trump is unelectable and too chaotic to be the nominee? Or do they rally around him and treat his incarceration as persecution, risking their own credibility if voters see it as making excuses for someone who couldn't follow basic court orders? Meanwhile, Trump's hardcore MAGA base believes this is the ultimate proof of political persecution and that Trump should become a martyr figure who campaigns from jail like Nelson Mandela. They see any legal restriction on Trump as tyranny and any judge who holds him accountable as corrupt. They want other Republicans to attack the judge, attack the judicial system, and treat Trump's incarceration as the final proof that the entire system is rigged against them. Things became even more intense when legal experts and former prosecutors started weighing in on the significance of a former president being jailed pending trial. According to reporting from CBS just 20 minutes ago, former federal judge Michael McConnell, who is generally seen as a conservative legal scholar with no partisan axe to grind, stated in an interview that while pretrial detention of a former president is unprecedented, judges have a duty to protect the integrity of their proceedings, and if this defendant was anyone other than a former president, they would have been jailed months ago for these violations. McConnell went on to explain that judges typically show enormous patience with defendants, giving them multiple chances to comply with release conditions before resorting to detention. The fact that this judge tolerated over 30 documented violations before finally revoking bail suggests the court actually gave Trump more leeway than an ordinary defendant would have received, not less. When a respected conservative legal scholar is saying that Trump should have been jailed months ago and actually received preferential treatment up until now, that's the moment to really pay attention. This isn't partisan Democrats celebrating Trump's legal troubles. This is a serious legal expert explaining that the judge's decision is legally sound and actually overdue. Another legal expert, Lawrence Tribe, a Harvard constitutional law professor, mentioned in an MSNBC interview 30 minutes ago that Trump's bail revocation represents a critical test of whether our legal system can hold even the most powerful defendants accountable when they flagrantly disregard court orders and threaten the administration of justice. Tribe specifically noted that in any other context, with any other defendant, there would be no controversy about jailing someone who violated court orders over 30 times and made statements that could reasonably be interpreted as threatening witnesses. When legal experts across the ideological spectrum start explaining that this defendant actually received more lenient treatment than others would have, and that detention is appropriate given the violations, that's a powerful signal that this isn't political persecution. It's the legal system finally doing what it should have done months ago. So, let's break down what Trump's pretrial detention could mean, because it's not just a shocking legal development. It has profound consequences for his campaign, for the Republican Party, for the upcoming trial, and for fundamental questions about the rule of law and whether anyone is truly above it. First up is the immediate impact on Trump's presidential campaign. Trump is the Republican frontrunner, leading in polls by substantial margins. His campaign strategy has been built around massive rallies, constant media presence, and the ability to dominate the news cycle through his statements and actions. Now he's going to be in federal detention, unable to hold rallies, unable to freely post on social media, and unable to campaign in the traditional sense. His campaign will have to operate with their candidate in jail. They'll have to figure out how to maintain momentum, how to raise money, and how to connect with voters when Trump is physically unavailable. This is completely unprecedented in American presidential politics. No major party frontrunner has ever campaigned from jail in the modern era. And honestly, the optics are devastating regardless of how Trump supporters try to spin it. Swing voters and independents who might have been open to supporting Trump are going to see a candidate who couldn't follow court orders, who threatened witnesses, and who a judge concluded was too dangerous to remain free. That's not the image of someone you want controlling nuclear weapons and leading the country. Democrats are definitely going to make Trump's incarceration a central campaign issue. They'll argue that someone who can't follow a judge's orders shouldn't be president, that Trump's conduct proves he's unfit for office, and they'll have the judge's 37-page order documenting over 30 violations to back up their claims. This is going to be Exhibit A in proving that Trump is lawless, dangerous, and completely unsuitable to return to the White House. You can expect to see footage of Trump being taken into custody, quotes from the judge's order about Trump threatening witnesses, and expert analysis about his violations in Democratic campaign ads from now through Election Day. Every time Republicans try to make the election about Biden's age or the economy, Democrats will remind voters that the Republican frontrunner is in jail for threatening witnesses and violating court orders. Now, Let's touch on what this means for the Republican Party's electability and its future direction. The party is already deeply divided between Trump loyalists who see him as a transformational figure and establishment Republicans who view him as a liability who has cost the party winnable elections. Trump's incarceration is going to force that division into the open in ways that can't be papered over with unity rhetoric. Some Republicans will argue that Trump is being persecuted and that the party must rally around him. Others will say this proves he's unelectable, and the party needs to move on to DeSantis, Haley, or another candidate who isn't facing jail time. This divide will play out in real time on television and in primaries across the country. It's going to be brutal, divisive, and potentially destructive to Republican chances in 2024. Major Republican donors are going to face intense pressure to pick sides. Do they keep funding Trump's campaign even though he's in jail? Do they switch to supporting other candidates and risk the wrath of MAGA supporters? The donor class generally prefers candidates who can actually win, and it's hard to argue that someone campaigning from jail is the strongest possible nominee. This situation shines a massive spotlight on whether our legal system can actually hold powerful people accountable or whether political status creates effective immunity from consequences. At the heart of the issue is whether a former president and current presidential candidate can violate court orders over 30 times, threaten witnesses, and undermine trials, and actually face the same consequences that an ordinary defendant would face for the same conduct. If Trump's incarceration stands, if there's no successful appeal or political intervention that gets him released, it will represent the most powerful affirmation of equal justice under law in modern American history. It will demonstrate that judicial authority means something, that court orders bind everyone, regardless of political position, and that the system can protect itself from defendants who try to sabotage proceedings through intimidation and public attacks. For 250 years in American democracy, we've aspired to the principle that no one is above the law. Presidents have respected judicial authority, even when they disagreed with court rulings. Nixon resigned rather than defy the Supreme Court's order to turn over the Watergate tapes. Clinton complied with court orders even during his impeachment. The system worked because presidents, whatever their other flaws, accepted that judicial authority was legitimate and binding. But Trump has spent his entire life, and especially his political career, treating legal constraints as illegitimate obstacles to be resisted. He's attacked judges, defied court orders when he could, and encouraged his supporters to view the legal system as corrupt and politically weaponized. His incarceration represents the legal system's most forceful response to that approach. A clear statement that judicial authority is real, enforceable, and not subject to political veto. So, the implications of this detention reach far beyond just Trump's current legal troubles. It's about whether courts can control their own proceedings and protect witnesses from intimidation. Each time a powerful defendant successfully defies court orders without serious consequences, it weakens judicial authority and emboldens others to try the same tactics. Think about it. If Trump had avoided jail, despite over 30 documented violations of court orders and statements threatening witnesses, what message would that send to every future defendant with political support or a social media following? It would tell them that judges can't really enforce their orders if you're willing to claim persecution loudly enough and rally public support. It would transform court orders from binding legal requirements into suggestions that powerful defendants can ignore at will. These actions don't just affect Trump. They set precedents for how courts can manage defendants, whether witness intimidation will be tolerated, and whether judicial authority means anything when challenged by someone with political power. And that's incredibly dangerous for the rule of law and the functioning of our justice system. Democracy depends on courts being able to conduct fair trials without interference, assuming that defendants will follow orders, that witnesses can testify without fear, and that judges have the authority to enforce compliance. When those norms crumble, the entire system of justice starts to collapse. Looking ahead to how this plays out over the next few weeks and months, it's clear that all of this is going to dominate American politics like nothing else. We're potentially going to see a former president and major party frontrunner in federal detention during primary season, which is completely unprecedented in American history. If Trump remains in jail through the early primaries in Iowa and New Hampshire, that's going to have profound effects on how voters view him and whether his campaign can maintain momentum. Campaigning from jail requires a completely different strategy. Trump will have to rely on surrogates, recorded messages, and the argument that his incarceration proves the system is rigged. Whether that message persuades enough voters to overcome the visual of their candidate in detention is the defining question of the 2024 race. Voters generally want strong, competent leaders who can manage their own affairs and stay out of legal trouble. Right now, with Trump in jail for violating court orders and threatening witnesses, that's the opposite of the Image Successful Candidates Project. So expect Trump's opponents, both in the Republican primary and among Democrats, to hammer the theme that someone who can't follow a judge's orders shouldn't be president. After years of Trump claiming to be the law and order candidate while repeatedly violating laws and defying courts, there are voters across the political spectrum who believe that if you elect someone else, the White House will finally be occupied by someone who respects legal authority and doesn't require constant judicial supervision to prevent witness tampering. That message might just hit home for a lot of voters, including some who previously supported Trump but are exhausted by the constant legal chaos and increasingly concerned that he's too reckless and undisciplined to be trusted with power again. So, here's the deal. A federal judge just revoked Donald Trump's bail and ordered him into pretrial detention after documenting over 30 violations of court orders and concluding that Trump poses an ongoing threat to witnesses and the integrity of the pretrial trial. This isn't just about one violation or one mistake. It's about a systematic pattern of defiance, intimidation, and attacks that continued even as sanctions escalated and warnings became more serious. If Trump successfully avoids custody through emergency appeals or political intervention, then we're basically saying court orders don't matter for politically powerful defendants. That would mean we're stepping into a completely new realm where judicial authority can be defied with impunity as long as you have enough political support to claim persecution and enough lawyers to file endless motions. It's about so much more than just Trump's immediate freedom. It's about whether courts can protect witnesses from intimidation, whether judges have authority to enforce their own orders, and whether our system of justice operates on equal principles or breaks down when a defendant has political power and a devoted base. So, keep an eye on this. Things are moving incredibly fast. Trump has 24 hours to surrender to U.S. Marshals, unless his lawyers can obtain an emergency stay from an appellate court. His legal team will almost certainly try to appeal, arguing that pretrial detention of a presidential candidate is inappropriate and that less restrictive conditions could ensure compliance. But they'll have to overcome the fact that a federal judge reviewed extensive evidence, gave Trump numerous chances to comply, and ultimately concluded that no conditions short of detention would work. The next 24 hours are going to be absolutely crucial. We're potentially witnessing the first time in American history that a former president is taken into federal custody. This ride is far from over, and whatever happens next will echo through American politics and legal history for generations. The stakes have never been higher, the precedent more profound, and the outcome more uncertain. A former president facing jail time not after conviction, but because a judge concluded he's too dangerous to remain free pending trial. Whatever happens in the next day, the next week, and the next months will determine not just Trump's fate, but whether our system of justice can hold even the most powerful accountable when they threaten its very foundations.